Jam since, that's existed for less than a year. Thank you all for signing up. This is a cultural exchange and also a skills exchange program. One thing I'd really like to say is that if you take something from this workshop and you start producing, or if you're already producing, please get in touch with us. We would like to release a compilation at the end of this year, thanks to all of this. So please send us your demos, and we'll probably put it out. So if you start creating, just get in touch, right? I really hope that you see that this is more of a collaborative ecosystem that we're trying to create rather than a competitive one. And get to know each other, start collaborating, start working together, and I hope you guys get to learn something from this.
Cool, thank you so much. Thank you. So welcome back to the people that were here yesterday, and welcome to people that are coming for the first time. Did you have a good one yesterday? Did you like it? Yeah, was it good, yeah? All right, cool.
Yeah, right answer. No, it was rubbish.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So the way today is going to be structured is we'll start off with a little introduction, and then we're going to spend the first half of the session on Ableton, and then the second half is going to be Logic. If you don't know what they are, they're two different music production softwares that you can, and yeah, so we're going to cover a couple of them. But I thought it might be nice for you to get an idea of our experience in music production, just so you know, like, what we do. So how did you start making music?
I think I was talking about it yesterday. Well actually, when I was 18, I did my first ever music production course, which was on a program called Cubase, which I never used again. So, but it was obviously like music's been my... Or do you want to try and check it? I think they checked it this one. Sorry, guys.
Yeah?
Is it on now? Can you hear it? I mean...
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's on. Okay. I mean, I started playing music instruments from a really young age, guitar, flute, piano, and then went to music school every Saturday, and I studied ethnomusicology at university, where I had to learn, well, my main performance instrument was the sitar, and then I also had to learn like gamelan music from Indonesia and Turkish classical ensemble, and singing, which was really difficult, Turkish singing. But yeah, so like I just mentioned, the first time I ever got an experience of using music production software was when I was 18, and I did a week's crash course on a program called Cubase. And even though I never really used that program ever again, it was interesting to learn like how things work and how to use a computer for putting things together. And then after that, I just started messing around on GarageBand. So I made like all my first tunes just using that, which is the free software that you get on an Apple computer. And then I progressed onto Ableton, because a lot of my friends were using Ableton at the time. Or some of them were. So I was just learning off them, and that's how I started. Yeah.
Cool, and now you released several albums on that.
No, well now I'm working on the second album, but I put out like 5 EPs and like various tracks on compilations. My first album came out at the end of 2017. It's called Weighing of the Heart, and that was released on Ninja Tune. And now I'm finishing off the second one, which will come out on the same label too, hopefully soon, when I finish it.
Cool.
Okay.
What about you?
So when I first started mixing, I started getting an idea of the kind of music I wanted to make. So I started sampling a lot of stuff, and including kind of like samples of street noise and my friends' conversations and stuff, and layering that over things. So it started as more of like an art project that never really got released. And then mostly after that, I started making loads of mashups and edits. And also what really got me in, even though I was really fluent in Ableton, I had Fruity Loops on the iPad like about 10 years ago, and I don't think the setup is the same, but it was really, it just synced with my brain, and I made so much amazing music on it that unfortunately I've now lost, but it was really inspiring just to have that there, so I could see something like GarageBand was also really fun to practice on. But Ableton does make sense in terms of you
being
can do
a bit more professional.
Can we turn the sound up a little bit?
Yeah, okay.
The speakers, there's some feedback today.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I released a few edits and remixes, and I also sometimes if I'm recording a mix, I use Ableton just to make it a bit more fun. Just put like film dialogues over it and stuff like that. It can be really fun for that. So yeah.
Cool. I think actually one question I want to ask you both is like, what was the kind of music you were making at that time, the Fruity Loops one? Was it like, what was
I don't know, almost like industrially house and like just chaotic, like really entrancing loops, like industrial Sufi vibes.
Yeah.
Is how I can,
Industrial Sufi.
like never ending. Yeah, yeah.
What about you when you first?
I was doing a lot of sampling and edits, so just taking like snippets out of other tracks and just building a whole new track out of that. And then also, I don't know, when I was about 19, I was in a noise band. It was just two of us, and then like we're trying to record the music we were making, which was like really, that was like way more kind of like experimental and droney.
But noise music was really liberating for that reason.
Yeah, and it was the scene that time.
Yeah,
so.
I think it's sad that that's not always around to inspire the kids today. It just showed me there was no one way to do something, and you can really blow people's minds with chaos and just freedom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What about you?
So it's funny, my best friend from school is here when I lived in Karachi.
Wow.
Big up Alai, make some noise for Alai. And I just had a flashback right now about us being in the PlayStation and like using that game, Music Maker 2000.
That's how all grime got made,
yeah. But we didn't really
Not
like
grime.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We didn't ever like do anything with that music or anything, but I guess it shows you that I was always interested in it. And then when I was younger, I was also in a band, like an indie band. You didn't know that, did you?
We need to
indie like moments in your life.
Yeah. So I used to play rhythm guitar and like do backing vocals and like write all the songs and like wear skinny jeans. For a moment.
So you were allowed, I wasn't allowed to play an instrument because my family's super religious, but because they're Sufis, we meet up every Thursday. My uncle calls us headbangers, and we just sing songs and bang drums.
Yeah.
And I feel like that played a part in like my musical vibe as well.
I think for me as well, like the whole like weddings.
Yeah, you love drums, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So that was a big inspiration as well. But then later on in life, I think I mentioned it yesterday, I studied chemistry, and I did a year abroad. In Germany, I was living in a place called Worms, which is spelled W-O-R-M-S, like worm.
Wow.
And I was working in like a catalyst manufacturing plant in the lab. And then just like when the experiment was going on, I'd just go quickly, just look at music tutorials. And then just like, when I got home straight away, I was like, I need to get out of that lab. Like, I need to do something else. Because it was so boring that like when I got home, I was just like ready to try new music. And then, I just like learned Logic. Around that time, everyone was trying to make like, everyone was trying to sound like Burial, like two-step kind of vibes, like garage, like UK garage, and I was just trying to get my drums to swing more. And so I just used to read loads of tutorials. Then I released an EP, which I just like self-released it, free download on SoundCloud, and then I even like made some CDs myself for it, and I used to go to raves and stuff and give them out to people in the smoking area.
Not at Oxford Circus.
No, it was like,
rap music.
Yeah, but then just kind of carried on after that. And that was like 8 years ago now.
No, you're doing it.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else we want to talk about in terms of music making before we get into the...
Well, the whole thing is going to be talking about that. So, I mean, you guys will...
Yeah, and I guess if we have any questions suddenly that come up to us whilst you're doing that, we can ask you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I know there's some new faces here today who weren't here yesterday. And yesterday what we did is we just went around and just introduced ourselves, just to say like who we are and why we're here and if you do music or what you do. So the new people, which two here, I think. Put your hand up if you're new from... Yeah, okay, so not that many. So maybe we can just quickly go around and you could introduce yourselves.
Hello. Hi. My name is Daniel, and this is my wife Vishal, and we're in a band called Tarboos. So we make music, and we've got one EP out and one single out. So yeah.
I'm Vishal, as you all heard that. I'm a singer-songwriter. I've recently gotten into music, and I'm starting my journey in production now. So I've produced about 2 songs. None of them are released yet, but I'm hoping to learn how to put the emotion that I experience, or at least the listeners experience when I'm performing live. I want to see that in production, and that's why I'm here.
Hi, I'm Maham, and I'm a visual and sound artist. So first, actually, I wasn't sure if I should even sign up for the workshop, but I really want to learn more about production and I guess putting some of the sounds together that I record, and I do a lot of field recording. So yeah, happy to be here. Is there anybody else?
Hi, I'm Neha. I'm a DJ myself, and now I really want to get into music production. So this is my way of learning. My first attempt. Let's see.
Cool. Okay. I think that was all the new.
I think Eliza. Is that it? No, one more, I think.
Oh yeah, your old long lost friend.
Yeah, well, Ahad was my best man. So, there's that. And who am I to you? Well, I teach the master's courses in filmmaking at Zabist and Ziauddin University. I also teach at our alma mater at Beacon House, media studies over there. And in terms of what I'm interested in here today, we do a lot of sound design, a lot of music production for film. And I approach it from that point of view and just how we can help bridge the gaps in the sound design industry in Pakistan. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, just picking up on something you said, like, when I was in a band, I hated relying on other people. Because you're like, oh, when are we going to put the practice in or whatever? Like, you know, it's hard to coordinate everyone. But I think what's empowering about music production is all you need is a laptop. And then you can, like, yeah, if you can translate that emotion into music just with that, it's like, yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna. Oh yeah, I just wanted to do a show of hands. Like, who here is just learning about? You know, who here has never tried music production before? Put your hand up. First time. Cool. Okay. And who's tried Ableton before? Or knows? Okay, quite a few. All right. So we're going to talk about Ableton first, and then Ahad's going to talk about Logic, because that's the program that he uses. But Manara and I both use Ableton. And we're going to basically start from scratch, like just because, you know, some people here are beginners and it's good to...
And there's people watching online as well.
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
Cool. So how do you want to get started? How are you going to approach it?
I think we'll just like go first. So we've got,
Yeah,
this is when you open Ableton, this is what the screen looks like for a new session. And I'm just going to talk through what all the different things are. And then...
We need it to be louder.
Oh, you can't hear it?
They can't hear it. Can't really hear it.
I'll put the mic closer to my mouth. Is that better? It's not as loud as yesterday. Okay, I've got 2 mics on today.
Yeah,
it's quieter. I think it's because... All right, is that better?
A little better.
No. You can hear you.
Oh.
Shall I do that?
Yeah, do that.
Okay, I'm just gonna hold it like that, okay? For the time being, but then if I'm doing stuff, I'll stop. Okay, so we're just gonna talk through all the basics of what everything means here on this screen when you open it up. And then we'll talk about 2 ways of recording sounds, the main 2 ways of using MIDI, which is like a kind of like computer-based language that was invented in the 80s for sending like signals from a controller or a keyboard or some other kind of musical hardware into a computer, and it registers the sounds, or just recording audio. So for example, if you wanted to record vocals or if you wanted to record any other kind of instrument as well. So we'll go through all of those. And then also Sarah's going to talk. We're both just going to talk about stuff the whole way through.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just going to jam on the side. And
Yeah.
Also, if I've got any questions, I'll ask.
Yeah, you can ask. Okay, cool. So this is what the window looks like when you open it. At the top, you've got the controls that you can see, right? Play, stop, record. And then where you see the 111, that tells you the bars. So how far you're going through the track once you're playing it. And then in this corner, at the 120, that signals the tempo, and if you click on that, you can change the tempo to whatever you want. Like, I don't know, if you're working on a slow jam, maybe you want to work at like 80 or 90, or you can basically choose whatever you want. And then the 4/4 is what we were talking about yesterday, 4 beats in a bar. So basically, this is kind of the standard setup. And like, if you wanted to make, I don't know, like a straight house tune, you'd probably just start with something like that. These 2 circles next to the 4/4 is a metronome. I don't know, so a metronome basically is like a constant beat that just like is good for recording in time too. It's also kind of an annoying sound. Well,
Really annoying.
Yeah, so basically if you click on that and then it goes yellow and then you press, why is it not playing? Yeah, so you'll just hear that the whole way through so you can be in time. Oh, okay. And then, but you can have that as like a count-in or not, and then these other controls are about, the one where it's got an arrow going all the way around, that's a loop. So if you press, if you press that and you mark like a certain section on the arrangement view, it just loops one bit over and over again. So for example, if you're doing different takes of an instrument or vocals, it just keeps going around and just recording you again and again. And these 2 bits here, where it's like the lines, I'll explain it when we get into maybe like the other view, but that just means that you're just recording. You can choose one section of the track that you want to record over, and when you press the record button, it's not going to erase other sections. It's just going to work on the bit that you've singled out. So they're all pretty useful. This button here, MIDI, if you press that, you can see everything goes blue, and that's for MIDI mapping. So here on the table, I've got a MIDI keyboard and 2 controllers like this with different buttons. And what you can do, because a lot of people use Ableton in a live performance as well. You know, you can trigger different sounds or things that you've recorded in. So when you press that button and everything turns blue, you can basically match up certain buttons, whatever buttons you want on your controller, to controls on here. So for example, if I wanted to click on that play, you press that and then you can press whichever button you want on your controller, and every time you press that button here, it will control that button on the computer, right? So that means that in a live setting, you're not like trying to move the mouse and things like that. It makes it much easier. That's just like a basic overview of what that does. And I don't know why that's gone like that. Okay, now it's loading something. I don't know what it's doing.
So would you not use the MIDI mode when you're making music? It's mainly
No, you
for
can
live.
use it for making, because maybe like it's more tactile to just be, I definitely find it more tactile to not be like using the mouse the whole time and like trying to press buttons that way, but you can like link it up to a keyboard or a controller and trigger stuff like that. Yeah. It just depends what kind of thing you're doing. Okay, I'm not sure. Oh my God.
This is a big part of the
Yeah.
experience as well.
If you're going to learn
this bit here.
What is going on?
If you're going to learn about production, you're going to learn about your software crashing.
Yeah, and anger management for sure.
Yeah.
Like deep
Always,
breaths.
okay, no,
deep
yeah, rule number
breaths.
1, sorry, wait, you got to always remember to save your work because it can crash anytime. And then you
And
lose
back
it.
up, because I learned the hard way. Like, my music studio got burgled and I lost 2 years worth of work and my whole new album. That's why the second album's taken me so long, because I've had to start it again from scratch. So back up, and not just on the cloud. So I have like 3 hard drives now that I just back up to. Because it was like so traumatizing. I couldn't even speak after that happened.
Are we back?
Okay, and so then these columns here, we've got one at the moment and it says audio on the top, right? So you can either open an audio track or a MIDI track. If you open an audio track, then everything that you're recording into there is kind of like real sound, right? So whether it's vocals, whether you want to drag in a music sample from somewhere else, or whether you want to record any other instrument, or you can open a MIDI track. And in this kind of thing, you can just load in an instrument from your computer that's already there. Let's see. This is also not my computer, so we're just gonna. Do you, where's Dan? Maybe Daniel should stand close by just in case. Is he in
He's
here?
outside.
He's gone outside. Okay, wait. Have you got like any MIDI instruments loaded in? And they're plugins? Oh. Okay, cool. Like any synths? Do you have any synths? Have you got any synthesizers in Operator? Okay, why do I keep going right click when that happens? Okay, cool. All right, cool. Thanks. Sorry about that. Okay, so here you can see these are all instruments that are included in the computer, and there's loads of different types. And when if you get Ableton, it comes with like basically a starter pack of sounds that you can use. And then when you want to progress, then you can purchase plugins, which are made by loads of different music software companies, and they make their own versions of instruments. Sometimes, like, for example, I use a lot of the Native Instruments ones, and they're amazing, and they really spend a lot of time trying to recreate, like, the real sound of loads of different types of instruments. But here, let's see, I'm going to load in this pad. So that's the sound that you can hear. Why is it doing that? Okay, and then on these columns, right, you see this box at the bottom. If you press it so it's red, that means that is the instrument that you can play and record at that time. So for example, then like I'm playing it through the MIDI keyboard, and that's coming there. So let's just record a thing in there.
Sounds like a vibe already.
Yeah. Can we turn it up? Is it from here? Yeah. Okay. So that's a sound that's already in there. On Ableton, you've got two arrangement views. Also, if you want to chip in at any time.
Yeah.
Okay. There's two screen views, right? So this is called the clip view, where you get these columns, and now you see I've recorded one sound in there. Every single column below that you can record in different versions, like anything you want, and they're all there. So everything in this, that will be for that synth sound which you just heard. And that audio track, for example, if I link that up to the mic, then every single, you can record different things in each section there. People who play live normally stick to this view, because then you have all the clips once you've built it all up, and then you can trigger each one. But I think for making music, it's often better to stick to this screen, which is the arrangement view. In Logic, this is the only one you have. And the reason why is because on the other side, you can often get stuck, like with the loops that you've created, and I don't know, like you can't kind of progress beyond that to try and
end up with too many different loops.
Yeah, too many different loops.
This way
and
you
you're
can
like,
see it all laid out.
Yeah, and if you're thinking,
it feels more modular.
Yeah.
Definitely, and you just press tab right to get to it.
Yeah.
And do you mostly make yours in this way or the other way?
I'm starting to do it more in this way,
Right, okay.
in this way, because the other way you'll just like end up making loads of little loops and sections which sound good, but then you're like, oh, how am I going to actually make this into a song?
Yeah.
So let's say I'll show you that little synth bit which I just recorded as a demo. If I copy that, okay, Okay, I don't use Windows, so how do I do it? Okay, just do copy. Okay, cool. So now you can see it's paid. Oh my god, this mic is so annoying. It's so annoying. I'm just going to wear it, right? Because I'll just talk loud and you can hear me, because that just makes too... Okay, not too loud. Just keep me posted on the volume level of my voice, okay? So that's pasted in there now, right? And like if I play it now from the beginning, if you click on it, it comes up at the bottom. So you see, the thing with MIDI is that it won't come up as a waveform. It comes up as these like bars, and on the side, if I make this bigger, that there is like the piano keys. So it's basically showing you what note you're playing. And
So you can just move it if you want, right?
Yeah, and if I do that, I can stretch it out. And it's because it's looped that section, right? So you can drag it out as much as you want, and it's just going to keep playing it.
Does it loop it automatically, or did you select it to be looped?
So with MIDI, I think it loops automatically, but you can unloop it if you want. You can cut it, paste it, move it around. One thing which I find really useful for sort of creating or manipulating the sound a lot more is that if you're using MIDI synths or MIDI drums or whatever, once you've got them in the arrangement, I then record the audio into a separate track. So then you actually get like the audio file. So the way that you do that, what was it, Control, yeah? No, it's not composing. So basically, I want to create an actual sound file of that synth sound. Okay, because right now it's just like, it's just in the it's just coming up as MIDI notes, which is different. So then I would you can insert an audio track underneath it, and then here where it says what you're recording it in from, I want to record in from that track in there. Then if I record this, you'll see. Right, so you can see now, it's basically the sound that's coming out of this channel is being recorded into this one as audio. And I just find with that, you can do a lot more in terms of manipulating the sound, adding effects on it, the way you EQ it, everything. Whereas MIDI, it's hard to really sculpt the sound in the same way. So I'll normally do that, and then I'll just mute all of the MIDI tracks and just work on the audio.
Can you also just do that directly? Just play it and then record it straight to audio?
If you're using an actual synthesizer, yeah. Because this is just triggering samples in the computer, yeah. Okay, so can you see where my mouse is there? Yeah, that top box, if you open it, if you drop down, you can select where you want the audio input coming from, okay? So number 1 track is the top one, has nothing in it. I've selected number 2, which is this Glass Motion synth pad. So that means that in this orange track, it's taking the audio only from the track that you've selected, and it's recording it into there. This is just for Ableton. This is the one that I use, so I know how this works. I guess Ahad will be able to say, does Logic have that function as well?
So you're asking how you make sure that this MIDI is getting recorded rather than the mic. Yeah. So in the same way, on that channel, you'd select the input. Yeah. But I've never recorded MIDI into audio like that on Logic.
Okay.
You usually bounce it out, so you export it, and then you drag it back in. So it's just different.
Yeah, it's just different ways.
Can you give a quick comparison between FL Studio and Logic?
Well, I haven't used either of the others, so it's hard to give a comparison. Both Manara and I just use Ableton, so we're just talking about this one.
I used to use it when it was. I used to use it purely on my iPhone and iPad, but the app has completely changed now. It used to be almost like a toddler could use it, very simple, like a drum machine on your phone. And the layout of it now, I can't. When you get used to something as modular, or everything's modular to whoever, Logic is modular to you. But yeah, I'm not super familiar with it. I think I found it kind of convoluted to use. And Ableton, maybe it could even be the child in me, it could be the colors. I just stuck with it. And it's blocks, and you can see it all laid out. I feel like I'm knitting or something.
Yeah, there's definitely things that you can do better in Ableton than Logic and vice versa, but I think it's just what you're more comfortable with and what you're used to. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you use.
Yeah, you have to just
you'll see the differences, the specific differences between the two when I do the Logic part.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Is that because Ableton does not take any more to mix it? Because FL does that. It make it put them in the mixer, and then you can add all the effects that you would on the other.
No, you can 100% do that on here as well. So if I highlight that MIDI channel, and if you want to drag EQs or reverbs or whatever it is onto that, it will do it. But I personally find that once you've got like the sound recording of that whatever MIDI instrument you're using, it just the feeling of it is a bit better. Like it doesn't. Maybe some of you who already do music production, you will notice like at least when you start out and you're trying to make a track, one of the hardest things to do is to make it not sound flat. Like not, you want the drums to be punchy, you want the vocals to have like a certain feeling about them, and all of those things. If you're only just working on the MIDI, it's really hard to achieve that. And
I think as well when you go to mix down, the mix down engineer will bounce each channel into an audio channel, and then re-export it as audio before working on it.
Yeah.
I just find it more fun to manipulate like this as well. I don't know if you agree.
So like you could. With this, you can do whatever you want. Like if you want to cut and paste, right? I'm just going to press S here next to that, which means solo. So if you press.
Could you keep that mic with you, and then whoever wants to talk, you can pass it?
Oh yeah. There was also another question. Was it about something I've already spoken to?
Yeah. Wait, the mic.
Is there a quality difference between if we use the MIDI section directly or convert it into the sound file and then use it? Is there like a quality?
I think the quality is better on the audio because then you can do more to it as well. So, for example, if you then EQ and compress the audio, like the waveform, you'll get way more out of it than trying to do it just on the MIDI.
If you export it, you can choose what quality you export it in. So if you export it as a high quality WAV, then it will come in like that.
And this is how you can make the MIDI parts sound professional because it's just the MIDI notes. It doesn't sound professional.
I mean, there's not really actually any difference in.
Right now, right now, if I played both of them,
they'll sound
exactly the same. Look, that's right now. It's playing the audio output, and that's the MIDI, and they sound exactly the same. But then once you move to the next stage, so basically, when you record in anything, any element, then you can't just leave it like that. I mean, you could, but that's not really how to produce music. You then have to go in and you have to think about what you're trying to do with that sound, how you want to carve it into the space. Because if you think of like the whole spectrum of when you listen to a track, right, first of all, there's like the panning and the space where you can hear music all the way around, like all the different sounds. And you really have to think about that. And you also have to think about the frequencies. So in a track, you'll have the drums, right? You'll have like the bass drums, and you'll have snares and toms and maybe hi-hats, cymbals. Each of those elements has to occupy a different space. If everything's sitting on top of each other, it's going to sound messy. It's going to sound like quite like the same dynamically the whole way through. It's just not going to be good. So therefore, once you've got all your elements, the next step would be to EQ it, which is equalize it. Let me go straight into that. Or I'll demonstrate it with vocals actually, because it's really important for vocals. It's important for. So whenever I make music, once I've got all the different elements, then you go into the next stage, which is EQ. Basically, I learned when I was watching the engineer who was mixing my whole album, and I sat in all of it, it was really eye-opening, and it made me realize how much you can do just with EQ and compression. You know, people go crazy with like trying to sidechain stuff, like adding a million effects, all this kind of stuff. But actually, really for drums, and definitely for things like guitar and vocals, just knowing how to use those two components.
I think it'd be super useful to describe what is EQ and what is compression.
So let's.
I don't even know how to.
And what is sidechain?
Okay, right. Well.
Yeah, I think it's easier to look at it as well, right?
Yeah, it's easier to look at it. So, also one thing which I totally didn't mention is like how, if you get Ableton, how you're going to set the whole thing up to work on. So once you've downloaded the program on your laptop, sorry, I'm backtracking a bit, but this is like key information, and you've got it on your computer, in terms of like, if you want to use speakers that are good, you can't plug those speakers really straight into your laptop. And if you want to start recording vocals and you're using an external mic, or if you're trying to record guitar sounds, then you can't do that straight from the computer. So then what you need to get, it's called a sound card or an audio interface. This is like one of the good entry-level ones. It's Focusrite, and it's the smallest one you can get. And this will connect up to your computer by USB usually. And then here in the front, you've got two. This one is the smallest one. It's got two inputs. So you can plug in like microphones or jack cables for any kind of instruments that you want to record straight in. And then out the back, these will be like how you connect speakers that you're working on. And that's just the main things that you need to get if you're going to start music production. It really, really makes a difference what sound card you use. So I first started on one of these Focusrite ones, which is good for beginners. But once you start using like the more high-end interfaces, you realize like it is a whole different level of the quality of sound you get in. But you know, getting into music production is super expensive. That's something that people don't often talk about, like the accessibility. It's like when you want to buy a new piece of music gear, you have to be like, okay, I need this. Like you might have to save up for it. Like sometimes things cost so much. I mean, the interface that I'm using now is like way more expensive than one of these, and I had to really be like, okay, I'm going to invest in one of those. But it just changes the way that you hear the details in the sound. So if you're serious about it, then you definitely need to invest in a better one and a good compressor microphone as well.
Do you think that everyone needs hardware to make good music?
I haven't got anything.
No.
Yeah, because
I
just about have one of
The
these.
first time we was in my studio, right, where you used that drum
I was
machine.
using a drum machine. I was like,
Start
wow.
out as a bedroom producer.
I still am. Like,
Yeah.
it was just like, just a laptop. And I think like sometimes you see as well, like, you know, people like Fortet, he doesn't have anything, any hardware.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to the thing of like, there's no right way of doing it, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people will just use sort of loops they've sourced online as well.
Exactly.
You can just use your headphones.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And then, and even what would you say is like an entry-level speaker to purchase that's worth it, that's not too expensive? Like,
What, like monitors?
Yeah.
Someone told me a name of one the other day. I'm going to get it up because they're really small as well. So they're easy to fit into a small space.
Yeah.
But other than that, a lot of people go for... Do you know? No, not the KRK Rockets. There's another one which is like really small. Like,
Oh yeah, the Genelex do like really mini ones.
Yeah.
Have you seen those?
There's some...
That's what you mean.
Yeah.
Maybe it's
If you're working in a small space, you don't need big monitors. Actually, it's bad to have such big monitors in a small space because the reflections of the room, you can't go that loud anyway without it sounding worse.
I feel like a lot of the producers that I grew up listening to from places like Brazil and stuff, the music was so lo-fi and it's designed to be listened to on Bluetooth. And that like really inspired me. That I was like, whoa, this like deep fried sound is sometimes okay. Obviously it's different in a club, it doesn't sound like as amazing as it could. But personally, once I started producing, I became a bit too obsessed with, do you ever find yourself getting stuck in a loop of like, you can't tell the difference? You know there's something different about what you did, but I would manically obsess over like 6 seconds of a song for like a week.
Yeah.
And that's why I never finished it.
That's why it's really hard. Sometimes you've listened to like one track a million times whilst you're working on it and then you have no idea what's going on. You just need to take a break or play it to someone else.
I think there's a mic with the microphone. Also, Nabihah, I think you should adjust your mic so it faces just the direction of it. Because it's inside
how
your
about-
codes and it keeps cutting in and out. Just so it's outside your codes.
Okay, I'll do it on this side. Should have worn a different collar.
Yeah.
Good affordable setup for bass music. Monitors. Do we need this stuff, or can we just do it like 5-inch?
Oh yeah, you don't. Yeah, I mean, you could even just do on headphones. Do you know what I mean? Like, basically, once you get into music production, there's no upper limit. When you start looking at monitors and how like high spec they get and what the prices are, it's kind of limitless. But you don't have to feel like you need those things because you don't. All of us started on like the absolute basics, and loads of really incredible music has been made. Like, you know, Kanye West made his first 2 or 3 albums, I think, on just Fruity and stuff. So it's not really about the gear so much. It's just more about like just being dedicated to it, and you can make things work with whatever setup is available to you.
I think for me, like, I've never had equipment, but I've been lucky enough to have access to mixdown engineers. So I get my track to a certain level, which is probably not an amazing level, and then I'll get it mixed down. But I know that, you know, from speaking to a few people, there isn't that many mixdown engineers in Karachi, and that's, you know, something that we've also identified. So yeah, I think it's worth like putting the words for it.
Yeah, there's another comment.
Cool.
Yeah, who?
I think one feedback's you being too close to each other, maybe.
Really?
Maybe.
Bye. Is it?
Is it the two mics as well?
I don't know, because I just arm that now.
Sorry, guys.
Should just do it mic for you. Should we just keep talking?
Should we keep going or?
Yeah, like I started off with like very cheap like Yamaha speakers that I bought secondhand, and I still don't really use a lot of hardware apart from I have a MIDI keyboard.
Yeah.
But I personally, you see how the way you've got it laid out in the audio mode, that's how a lot of you were talking about like bass music production. A lot of people will usually source their drum loops from somewhere and their samples and then get into making the bass lines once they've done that. But I think what you do, the reason I respected it as well is because to me it takes a lot more work. Like I'm looking at you and I'm feeling lazy.
No, but all of us, like to make one song is really hard.
Yeah.
Like anyone who makes music knows that, right? It's like it's not easy. It's like a proper feat to just come up with one track that you're happy with and you feel like it's ready to share with everyone. Whether that's an edit or a track from scratch or whatever. I think.
Yeah, I think we should make some progress with what you're doing and maybe hold off on the questions.
Should we record a vocal?
Oh my god.
Huh?
Should we record a vocal?
Yeah, let's record. Let's see how this goes with all the feedback.
Are you recording something?
I'm gonna try.
Okay. So would this be your process? Like record vocals pretty early on?
No, it depends. It just totally depends.
We've only got short, limited time.
Yeah, I'm just gonna demo.
Condense
I don't
it all.
know what coming through here. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Hello. No, it's not. Okay. Hello. Is that coming through? Is it? Can you hear that out of the speakers? Okay. Cool. All right. So I'm just going to demonstrate something about recording vocals. Let's just record in something really basic.
What is the microphone plugged into right now to
right,
record?
so this is actually, so with the mic, what I was explaining is like once you have an interface, you have to plug it through there and then set that as your audio input and output on the computer. And so it'll be going through there. Right now we're actually using this bigger mixer as the interface. So that's what the mic's going through. And then you can see, like when I talk into it, can you see the green line that's coming up there? That shows you the signal. So that it's receiving the sound signal. And then I've pressed the arm button on, so that's why it's red. And it. Reduce the noise.
Sorry.
Oh, well, like ideally, well, it depends. Ideally, if you're trying to record vocals, like, you need to try and do it in a quiet place to start with, so that you don't have to do too much noise reduction. But you can do that afterwards, you know, if there's some sort
The noise, the little noise which is coming. So we have to use the noise chain before this, or like we have to do this after the
You
record?
can do it after you record.
After.
Yeah, because basically that will just, whatever you record in, you can treat the sound after that. So I'm just going to try, oh my god, I feel like it's not right. Let's just do, hello from District 19. Okay, that came in way too quiet. Let's see if I can just move from.
Is the mic going up?
Mic gains on here. Okay, a different input because that was too quiet. Sorry that this is a bit haphazard, guys, but hopefully you're getting something out of it. And the bottom line is, YouTube tutorials are a game changer. And like whenever I'm stuck on anything and I want to learn something new, you just type it in. And on Ableton website, they have really good like problem solving and also tips and stuff. So that's just the great thing about the internet.
Yeah, I think in terms of like finding out what each button does, you can look on YouTube. But I think what's interesting about this is seeing your specific approach and like, you know, what you do.
Yeah.
Really.
I mean, oh yeah, that's much better. That's much better. Okay. All right. Right.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
I'm just doing. Why is that not? Oh shit! Sorry. Okay. Okay. Cool. Right. See this light, this bar at the top, right? That's the looper. So I'm just going to section. Yeah.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
Okay. That is so.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
Yeah, we can make it louder on here.
Hello from District
Okay, so if you want to
19,
make the actual
Karachi.
file louder, you click on it there.
Hello from District
And here you
19,
make it louder. I'm just
Karachi.
going to push it up for a few. We're going to get.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
Okay, so that's the waveform of what I've recorded.
Hello from District
You can hear
19,
that,
Karachi.
Like, I know I have a bit of a low voice anyway, but there's loads of low
Hello
ends in there,
from
right?
District.
It sounds muddy, and there's no way that quality of vocal will sound good if you're trying to build a track out of it. So the rule of thumb with how to EQ. So now I'm going to put an EQ and equalizer on this audio track. Okay. So this box here basically shows the whole frequency range of the sound. And when I press play again, you'll see.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
It's showing you like where the sound's coming out. In the
Hello
frequency
from
range.
District.
The first thing to always do for any kind of vocals, and also for any guitar as well, is to just take all the low ends out. Normally I track this to around 100. And you hear the difference straight away.
Hello from District 19, Karachi. Hello from District 19, Karachi. Hello from District 19, Karachi. Hello from District 19, Karachi.
Yeah, so you just take out all the low end and it just makes the voice way more clearer. So this is really important even if you want to use Ableton to record like an interview or a podcast or a radio show or something, how to treat your voice afterwards. So, and then normally I think just to enhance it a bit, I'll like lift it around there maybe, and maybe a bit that way, just to make it a bit brighter.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
Sorry. You're gonna
Hello
get
from
Okay, and then the next thing that I'll put on it is a compressor. And what the compressor does is basically, so you see in that waveform, like the first bit is a lot louder because you can see the waves thicker and it's a lot bigger and it gets quieter. So for any kind of audio sound, the role of a compressor is to basically just reduce the difference between the loudest part and the quietest part and to just even it out. So it will like stop the loud bits being too loud and it'll push up the quiet bits so it just sounds neat. So we'll try that now. So I'll play it.
Hello from District 19, Karachi. Hello from District 19, Karachi.
In this section, if you can.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
I normally use the Ableton.
Hello from District 19.
First thing. So I'll put an EQ and a compressor and then another EQ on everything, and then effects, and then on the master output, which is down here. So basically anything that you put on this bottom master track is going to affect everything together, the whole track. And I'll do that right at the end. And that's a way of like, I guess doing kind of like a mix down. So however you want the track to sound like. Yeah, exactly. Overall. You should always do EQ first. Because basically like doing the EQ first, you're fixing the sound so that you're getting rid of the bits you don't want on the first level, and then the compressor is enhancing all the sounds, right, and evening out. So yeah, so this is the order, right? So that's the first one, that's the second thing. Whatever you keep adding, it will just keep going on. Okay. So, and then the hack trick is like to do the EQ and a compressor and then add another EQ onto it.
So when you put that compressor on, did you change anything?
Yeah. So I've made it.
No, as in like on the actual parameters of the compressor.
Yeah, I just. change this bit here. So I go to this view where you can like change like the you can see the output, and basically you'll hear this now when I play it.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
So now can you hear like the quieter bit?
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
And now if I take off both of these effects.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
That's just without the compressor.
Hello from District 19,
and then that's without the
Karachi.
EQ, so it's way more muddy, right?
Hello from
So that's the
District
raw
19,
sound.
Karachi.
And this is with EQ and compressor.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
So it's already made a massive difference, and that's just with like the two most basic like components that you just need to use that on everything. Literally every single thing that you record, this is the best way to like start the treatment of the sound.
But don't always just take the bass out.
No. So this is the way I would do vocals, right? Where I'm taking the bass out, I'm enhancing like this area here to just make my voice sound a bit brighter and a bit more open. Obviously, if you're working on a kick drum and you do that, then there's not going to be any kick drum sound, right? Or like any bassy sound. But then you would manipulate that differently. This is just like a really very short tutorial. I'm just showing you a few things. But if for bassier sounds, you would do a different thing. If you're just working on like a very shimmery high-end sound, like for example, cymbals or a very twinkly synth, then you'd probably drag this all the way up here and just like, just work on that like high frequency area. So it really just depends. But this is the way that I would do vocals. And I would actually put another EQ on this afterwards. Oh, sorry.
About compression, how do we decide how to do that?
The best way is to listen to the sound and see. So, and also to watch the output. So the one thing you don't want to do, right, if I just play it again.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
Levels, right? Nothing should be going into the.
Hello from.
If you kind of like, I don't know, raise the output too much or decrease the threshold, then and it start maxing, that's not good. So yeah, another really important thing is that every single track and all the levels, basically all of these green strips, right? Whenever you're working on
Hello from.
None of them should ever go into the red at all, not even one side, because that means it's distorting. And even though it might sound okay to you whilst you're working on the track, when you export it, it's going to distort the sound and it won't sound good at all. And I know like loads of people who want to make like big, loud music, they'll just be like maxing everything up right to the top, everything's in the reds. But if you want to release that track and you want to like, get it out of the session, it's not going to work. It's just not going to work at all. So sometimes it's tough because, you're like listening to it nice and loud and then you feel like, oh, I need to reduce it because things are going into the red and then it just sounds too quiet to you, but it's fine. It will be okay in the end, right? So yeah, just never ever go in the red. Okay, so as I was saying, I would then put another E after. Again, the same thing. And this one is to basically, now that you've done like the primary treatment of the audio track, this one is to just like enhance it a little bit more. And it will make more of a difference as well.
Can you explain to us what you selected?
Hello from District 9.
Oh yeah. So okay, these strips, these buttons along the bottom, they describe like the different types of waveforms. So, oh my god, mouse pad is quite. So before it was, I think it was on that, which just gives you like the straight line across. But if you want to take out the low sound, then you use, you see this one where it's curving upwards. That demonstrates that it's going to take out like the low frequencies. Because I just want to do that again. So let me just play it again.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
Down there, so you might as well move that up.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
Around here where my voice is kind of like.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
Lift this up a bit more.
Hello from District 19, Karachi. Hello from District 19, Karachi. Hello from District 19, Karachi.
And it's just like, it's quite nuanced.
Hello
like,
from District 19, Karachi.
In the studio, then you would just spend some time like figuring it out. But I just think that this system of processing tracks before you start putting on like any other crazier effects It's really going to help because once you've got all the different layers, right, like you might record in loads of drums, you might have different vocal layers, you might have some keyboard, like synthesizer sounds. You don't want everything to get so cluttered that you can't hear anything clearly. So it's a really good way. And then another thing I will show you. Okay. But basically, there's another type of EQ that I would use, which is called a graphic EQ. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that kind of EQ, but basically, it looks really different to this. You get loads of different. I wish there was. Is Daniel in there? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Look, I would really recommend looking up graphic EQ because with that, you have like all the different points along the frequency range. And for example, if you're recording vocals with a lot of like S sounds in them and you get that like harsh, like sibilant sound, and you don't want that in there, especially when you start putting reverbs on there or delays, it's really going to accentuate those like harsh sounds and you just don't want that at all. With a graphic EQ, it gives you all the points, and what you do is you push it up really high and you find those points where it sounds really bad, and then once you found where it's really bad, you drag it all the way down just below zero. So you'd push this all the way up, move it across, find those disgusting frequencies where it's like all those things, and then just drag it down just below zero, and it really fine-tunes it. Yeah, the graphic EQ, because that allows you to just pinpoint certain areas in the frequency range.
So what you're picking up these effects, or you say it's the EQ, right? And there are different kinds, right?
Yeah.
And that's your library from where you pick up and you work on it. So there's so many, like how do you decide which ones to use if you're not using all of them? And I think then it brings us to the question, what is the function of the equalizer exactly?
Yeah.
I mean, you explained it really nicely when you talked about the graphic equalizer, because that's really something like, wow, okay, you can actually get rid of the muffle or, the S, like you said, right? So yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, sorry, I guess I didn't really say what the equalizer is, but basically, for any kind of sound, right, you've got the frequency range. Low frequencies are the bassier sounds, and high frequencies are the higher pitched sounds. And with an equalizer, you can just basically manipulate it a bit, which is exactly what I'm doing with my voice here. In this bit, like I've dragged out all of the low end, and all of that muddiness is gone. And I just want to focus on the mid-range and then also just like highlight some of the high parts.
Maybe it'd be useful to show what happens when you turn the highs right up, for example.
Okay. Are you ready for this?
Or just different.
So the equalizer basically shows all the different frequencies and the kind of like most basic ways. It's like on a mixer yesterday, when we were DJing, there was low, mid, high. That was the EQ on the mixer. So you're taking out the low sounds, or you're taking out the middle sounds, or maybe you're adding extra low frequencies, For a bass drum, you probably want to push that frequency up a bit so you get that like pumping sound. That's all it means. And for like high twinkly sounds, those are all high frequency. So those waveforms will be around this area. And a compressor basically reduces the difference between the loudest parts of your recording and the quietest, and makes it even out.
Yeah, so I guess compressors are to do with volume, rather than frequency.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of people try and make you think of it like a box, so loud, and then, but not wide, because wide is something else. Wide is like panning from left and right, but the frequency range, high to low, and then volume up to down.
Yeah.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
Let's get rid of this EQ for a second.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
If I bring this all the way back here.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
And now I can push that up and then.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
Sounding, right? And I can bring that back.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
And then, if I push this up.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
High frequency sounds.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
You might.
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
Depends what
Hello
else.
from District 19,
what
Karachi.
else is playing as well. I think like
Hello
it's about
from
trying to get
District 19,
different
Karachi.
sounds to work well together. Because if you've got same
Hello
sounds
from
on the same
District
frequency
19,
range,
Karachi.
then that thing we were talking about clipping, like where it's too
Hello
loud,
from
that
District
happens.
19,
So you have to try and put them
Karachi.
all together like pieces of a puzzle. You can't have too
Hello
many
from
things in the same
District
frequency.
19, Karachi.
And see, now I've dragged it all the way.
Hello from
It's
District
almost like a
19,
whisper,
Karachi.
because you only get those high sections.
Hello from District 19, Karachi. Hello from District 19.
Okay, so it really makes a big difference. And to be fair, like that's
Hello
an aesthetic
from
as well.
District
Maybe you want to go for
19,
this sort of
Karachi.
tinny telephone type of sound for like little
Hello
bits of
from
vocals.
District 19, Karachi.
But I'm just trying to make it sound a bit
Hello from District 19, Karachi.
clearer than the raw.
Hello from District
Now
19,
with that
Karachi.
additional EQ, it's made it even more clear.
Hello.
So that's the basic approach that I would take to like any audio recordings that you put in a session.
I have a question.
I'll talk.
There's a
Oh
question.
yeah.
If I'm writing like kick drums for the track, so I've never used an equalizer before to make them sound like more basic. Yeah, if I'm writing drums, so should I do this exact same thing there, but like remove the high ends and then compress them?
Just about to start talking about drums.
Okay,
Okay, so one thing that I've noticed, especially because I've like done different production workshops, one thing which I feel like quite a lot of people do, maybe they just don't realize, is when you're recording drums, whether you're using like MIDI drum samples or a drum machine, a lot of people will record all the drums on one track. I don't know if you do that. So so basically everything is in one section like this, and then you've got the kick drum there, you've got the snare, you've got the hi-hats, the whole drum patterns on one thing. And that is a big no-no, because then everything's stuck together, so any kind of manipulation you try and do will affect all of those sounds. But if you think about it, the way that a hi-hat sounds is so different to a kick drum, so you can't treat them the same way. So therefore, when you're recording drums, the first most important thing to do is to make sure every single thing is on a separate track. And it takes way longer, but it's the way to do it. So you have to make sure your kick drum is on a separate track. Then if you've got snares, that's on a separate track. A cowbell or a wood block or any kind of other percussion thing, every single thing has to be on a separate track. And then within each of those, you've got to go through and you've got to do the equalizing treatment, the EQ, and the compression differently for each thing. So does that answer? Yeah, so you're going to have to do it for each thing, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so, I mean, people have different theories on what the best way is to do effects, but for me, and like from people that I've learned from, the best way is to EQ always comes first, because that's the sort of like most basic thing. You're getting rid of the sounds you don't want, right? Because think about it, like if you compress without EQ, you're then going to be enhancing the sound bits of the sound that you don't even want there. So the EQ allows you to take the unwanted sections away. It allows you to enhance the bits you want, and then the compressor makes things sound fuller and louder. And then if you want to add on, let's say, like, okay, we'll just go back to this vocals clip that I've recorded. If we want to add more effects onto that, for example, let's see, I can put like a filter delay onto it. These like hello, District 19, Karachi. So those kind of effects, anything else would come afterwards. And it's the same with when you're using, I don't know if any of you guys play guitar and you have a pedal board, the way that you arrange your pedals, it should really be in that order as well. So like any EQ or like compressor pedal always comes first, and then usually then you might have like a phaser or a flanger, and distortion normally comes early on as well. Well, there's like no one way about it, but in terms of what each effect does and understanding that and how it's going to affect the overall sound, then you definitely do need to think a little bit about the order for sure. But yeah, so EQ, compressor, another EQ, and then you can go crazy with whatever effects you want to like try and make things sound more spacey for sure.
Can you talk us through some of your favorite effects on here?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about the graphic EQ. So if you're, let's say, recording outside, or you get samples from like field recording, does that work well with graphic EQ as well? Because I feel like otherwise it's very difficult sometimes to like get the sound of the wind out, or like just certain like distortive sort of sounds out of that recording?
Yeah.
Or would you suggest like using a different?
So if you're using field recordings that you've made yourself, then there's a lot of things you need to think about during the whole process of making the field recordings. So I make a lot of field recordings as well. So for example, like for outdoor, it's always good to use a windshield, even if it doesn't feel windy outside. If it feels like a still day, your microphone's still going to be picking up some of that. So there's things like that you can do. Or, you know, if you're in trying to record someone's voice, for example, you wouldn't, if you were in here, you can hear that background hum of the AC. You wouldn't want that. So you'd have to turn it off or go somewhere else. So there's all these things that you can think about. But graphic EQ, once you're in this space and you've dragged in your recording and you want to like take certain bits out, yeah, it's a good way of doing it. Before you do other things, yeah.
Okay, question related to the topic we are about to jump on right now. What are the basic ingredients of a beat? Like if you want to create a beat, so like bass, drums, hi-hats, you know, what are the basic 4 or 5 things then that, okay, this is a beat now and we can record something onto this beat right away?
Well, again, it's like purely like...
Please cover it, if we can just create a basic beat,
I think,
if
are you
that's
gonna,
possible.
Yeah,
I'll probably do.
Yeah, he'll probably... So,
All right,
because, we want to try and cover different things, and I heard like King was making beats. Sure. So, I feel like in terms of getting ideas of how to...
But I think when it comes to electronic music, it's probably drums, bass, effects, vocals if you've got vocals, and then synths or pads. So that's like the 5, 6 for electronic music. If you wanted to bunch them into 5 or 6.
Yeah, and then any other elements that you want to put on as well. But I mean, in terms of making a drum beat, obviously, like the most basic way to think about it is if we're making a track in 4/4 and there's 4 beats in the bar, and you want to make a dance track, you might start by having like the kick drum on each beat, and then maybe you want to have the snare on like every second beat, and then get like the kind of vibe and then fill it in. So that's like the most basic way of going about it. But to be honest, you can just do what you like. Totally creative. I mean, I always think about the Prince song, I Would Die For You, where it's like, he like literally misses out the second beat, I think, in every single bar. And it's quite interesting because I can't think of any other sort of mainstream pop song that does that, but it works for that. So you can really just try out what you need.
Drake's producer, Noah, 40, he produces like very, very basic beats, like an ambient sound, and then a drum and snare. That's it. 40, if you have heard about it.
Yeah, some people's signature is like really simple and that works for them. And you can start in any order you want. You could start with like a spacey intro. You could have had the melody in your head for like the drop. And you can. It depends also how your mind works. Some people are okay with just starting from the end and going back. Some people have a very modular approach of like, okay, this is what it takes to make a beat. This intro, then the drums come in, and then then they make the bass at the end. But some people are just, because you can also see it all laid out in front of you. And once you get your program and you discover which order works best for you, it could be organized, it could be chaos, it could be either. But I feel like there's no one way to start it, yeah.
I don't know whether this is... So another thing I wanted to do was to play one of my tracks and then talk about it and like, you know, a breakdown. Maybe this is a good
Yeah, I think we should do that because we're going to run out of time otherwise, right? Yeah.
But I think with it, in answer to your question, he probably made 100 of those simple beats, and then Drake probably picked like one that he liked, so you never know. You know what I mean? But yeah, keeping it simple, I think, is like you can...
Especially when you're going to be selling it to someone who's going to do a vocal over it. That's a whole different... That's a whole different world. Yeah, and sometimes those people get discovered by accident as well.
YouTube on the internet. Do you want to? I don't want to.
So you're going to play one of your tracks?
Yeah. So I'll play the track. I can play it. I don't know if you guys want to see the video. I can play it off YouTube. Otherwise, I can play it off Spotify. Might as well watch the video. The track which has been the most popular on my first album, and the track's called Zone 1 to 6000. And so I thought maybe listen to it, and then I can talk through how I came up with the whole arrangement and the ideas for it, and also if you guys have any questions about that. Because then, you know, this is like, I'm showing you like tiny, tiny little snippets of what
you could talk about that for years.
You could talk about this forever, and it's impossible to just cover everything in one go, but
EQ and compression is really important.
Yeah, they're really important. Like, you can't go further if you don't do that. And you'll see how much you can change and enhance and improve the sound just with those two things. So there's no way that I could have done this tutorial without talking about...
I'm glad you did that and I didn't have to do it.
Okay, yeah, exactly, because you'll cover different stuff.
Yes.
Okay, there it is. Okay, so this... Yeah, go on. Is there sound?
Hello. Yes. So I wanted to ask that for the EQ and compression, when we treat the sound, how small of a segment should we take? In terms of like what you just did, you took like a bunch of segments out of that.
Oh, you should probably just take the whole track. I mean, if there's some vocal bits which are sounding really different, then you would drag them onto a separate one, because each treatment, like if you start manipulating everything within one thing, it can be quite complicated. So maybe you've got like, you know, your main vocal and you want that to sound one way, but then you have backing vocals which you want it to sound a different way. So you drag that onto another track below and then treat that in the way you want. So you can do that.
So in like the mix down process, I think, with dance music anyway, they pick the most busiest, loudest part of the track and they'll loop that for 8 bars and try and get that perfect, and then everything else will be much easier to get.
So like if the track is, I don't know, 3 minutes, so we do the whole thing at the same time, except for the sounds that are kind of out of it.
Solo each thing, work on it separately, and then but keep listening to it as a whole as well, right? Because like if you just kind of like solo the drums and you like get the drums sounding how you want, but then you add them back into the track and then you realize they're way too loud compared to everything else, or way too quiet. So it's just quite a long process of going back and forth, listening to things separately, listening to things together, and you know, you also have to think about like the way most people listen to music these days is on laptop speakers or a phone speaker. So, for example, when I was making all the music for this album, when I got to the final stage of like my mix as well, but also when the engineer did the final mix down, every step of the way we would check what it sounded like through really like quite rubbish speakers, and how it sounded like through a phone, how it sounded like through laptop speakers, because you just want to make sure that everything that you're trying to get across is coming across in the way that most people are going to listen to it. Another quick rule of thumb, like if you guys are taking notes, is that when you're listening to the mix of a track, a good thing to do is whilst you're listening to it, turn it down gently, turn the volume down all the way to 0. And the main rule of thumb is like the high end stuff. So let's say like any kind of like twinkly, sparkly sound, or the high bits of your drum kit. So like cymbals, hi-hats, any other high percussion. That should be the last thing you hear before the volume cuts out, okay? So as you turn it down, you want to hear that last in the mix. Like that should be the last thing to fade out. And that normally means that things are spaced out quite nicely. I didn't get onto panning, maybe that's something you can cover a bit, but like, you know, left and right and where you want to place each thing. That's a whole lot of, like,
and I know this is jumping ahead, but how do you mix vocals with the sound? Are we going to cover that? Like,
yeah, let me play this track and then maybe we can talk about that. So this has got vocals in it, and it's got loads of stuff in it. So we'll just... Okay.
We wander through each other's lives just like the rivers, constant flow and signs of life in all our eyes. Keep this city on the go. We're all just trying to make it through. We're all just trying to make it through. In every class, in every school, at every Escape on Friday, get caught on Monday. The sun will rise, the sun will set. 7 days, 5 and 2, from this life into the next. We're all just trying to make it through. We're all just trying to make it through. How the crowds emerge at night, transported through the underground, searching for that wonder light, glimpsed in dreams but rarely found. And all through midnight streets you'll hear how the youthful and the old party hard to numb the fear. No one wants to feel the cold. Escape on Friday, get caught on Monday. Who to be and how to be and what to wear and who to know and where to go and do you care? Follow me, I'll take you there. Who to be and how to be and what to wear and who to know and where to go and do you care? Follow me, I'll take you there. Follow me, I'll take you there. In every slap and every kiss and every push that turns to shove, in every hit and every miss, it's always work and never love. It's always work and never love. In every slap and every kiss and every push that turns to shove, in every hit and every miss, it's always work and never love. It's always work and never love.
Cool. Okay. Feels weird to be watching that, like, in this context. But anyway, so that track ended up being the most popular on the album that I put out. So I thought I'd share it with you and just talk about the process a little bit, and also if you have any questions. And then once we do that, we can take a break and come back with iPad and Logic,
Club bangers.
drums, and club bangers. Yeah, whereas mine's more like emotional bangers.
Tell us about the order that you made the track.
So this track, I actually made it in one night, like the kind of skeletal version. And I think, like, I don't know, from my experience of making music, I feel like to get to that point of epiphany where you get this idea and you feel good about it and it turns into something, you have to go through like hours and hours of making things and starting again and deleting it and feeling frustrated. And then there's no other way to get to that point. So I don't know. I mean, I was in the studio, I was working on loads of stuff, and then I think it was literally around 11 p.m. where I got that, like the intro synth line, like that kind of like synth, that those chords which just open up and like that repetitiveness. And that's the first element that I came up with for this track. And then I was just playing that really loudly on repeat for ages, trying to figure out what do I want to do on top of that. And then I came up with the drum beat on this. So I wasn't using MIDI drums for that. I was using this Alesis SR16 drum machine, which has like that kind of like old school 80s/early 90s sound. So the drum beat was on that. And then, I don't know, I got the idea of like, okay, I want to make this track about London, or just like life, living in a massive city and what it feels like. And then it made me think of a poem called London, written by William Blake, which is like one of the most famous poems that you learn about growing up in England. So, I don't know, I just like got that poem up and then reading through it and then had this idea of sticking, because you know the lyrics are really rhythmic, and it's like in iambic pentameter or something, which like Shakespeare used all the time as well. And I'm sure there's probably way more interesting rhythms in like poetic Urdu, I'm sure. I don't know about any of those, but it could be cool to make an Urdu version one day when my Urdu gets better. But yeah, so then I decided to basically rework the poem and think about the different themes in that, but put my own lyrics in and kind of like make it have more references which are more contemporary. And so like the first section of the song is just talking about, you know, like the refrain in it is like wait, I can't even remember the words now, but it's talking about like the weekday and like this toil, and then like when you get to the weekend and this sense of escapism, and then you have that breakdown in the middle where all the drums and everything goes out, and it just becomes like this very ambient section, and then it comes back with this like quite rolling bass line that fits the drums. That was the first time I've made a bass line like that, and I think it really works in terms of like creating a good momentum or a sense of movement in a track. So I definitely need to try and do that again. So I made that in my old studio in London, which is in a place called Studio 13 in West London. It's actually the studio of Damon Albarn from Gorillaz and Blur. It's his building. So I was just a resident in there in one of the rooms. And my setup was my old like dinosaur laptop, like one of the old MacBook Pros. And then I'd borrowed, because I was in that big studio, and I was like, I don't have a really good mic, and I don't have a really good interface. So I just managed to borrow a lot of stuff from downstairs. So I was using a Motu interface, a small one, and then a Neumann mic, which was a real pleasure to use because they cost like $4 or $5 grand each. And like, it'll be good to be able to buy one of those one day. But yeah, so I was using that for the vocals, and then I was basically DIing my guitar, so direct input guitar like straight into the interface without using an amplifier. And then I think most of the synth sounds were probably from plugins and recording them as audio like I showed you at the beginning. And yeah, that's basically how.
You said you made the skeleton of the track in one night.
Yeah, in one
How long did it
night.
take you after that to refine it and get it to a point where you were happy with it?
So by the time I remember that night really well, because I remember it was like 11 when I started getting the idea, and then I stayed up all night and worked on it, and then cycled home at sunrise at like 6 a.m. And I was like, oh my God. But I felt so good because I was like, I like this idea. And then I think after that, then the refinement can be like, you know, the most sort of tricky point. I think I came up with all the lyrics in one night, but then probably like, yeah, like, I don't know. It's hard to gauge how much time I spent on it, because then I was working on the sounds and trying to make it feel how I wanted it to feel. But then when I took it to the mixing stage with Steve Sedgwick, then he basically did what Ahad was saying and bounced out all the separate parts and then started again. And I mean, it was like a real learning curve to see how the album was mixed, because it was done in an analog studio, and it was done through like a big like Neve desk, and with all like analog gear, like all the EQ and all the compression and everything that you hear on this final version. It was all done with outboard gear, not like on computers. And it definitely adds like a certain something to it which you can't recreate through computers, but it doesn't mean that you can't make stuff that sounds as good just on computers.
How do you deal with handing over your work to someone else?
Well, I was
Do they
there
ever
the whole
take it in
time.
a direction like that you don't approve of? Or
I just said when I didn't like it.
you had to be assertive when
it
someone
took
else
about, yeah, it took like a week to mix the whole album, and I just sat in the whole time. Some people don't do that, so I sat in on all the mixing and all the mastering. Some people might like send it off to get mixed or send it off to get mastered, and they just send it back and you're like, cool. Or maybe you'll send it back for like a different version, but that feels a bit long-winded. Whereas like if you're in the room at the time and something's going in a direction that you're not happy with, then you can just tell them and they'll undo it, or they'll try something else. So, and I learned so much, like all this stuff about EQ and compression, I just learned from sitting in there, and just so much other stuff. And yeah, it was like in a week, like a good crash course in mixing tips. Yeah.
So where did you go to get it mixed down?
So I mixed it in the studio, like in the main studio downstairs in that building. It's like this huge, incredible studio where they have like a desk that costs £1 million. So it's not like normal equipment that you can access. But yeah, we just did it all in there. They had everything. Yeah. Cool. I don't know if anyone's got any questions about anything I've said so far. Yeah.
Just kind of related, but like, you know how when we DJ, it's between songs and all of that, but when you actually produce, like, how important is music theory? Like, because like, you know, when, like I played basic guitar, but it was just me and my mate, like, you know, playing guitar, right? Yeah. So it's just about tabs, and I didn't even know the chords. So you kind of like just learn the positions of your fingers and all of that, and you just play. So like, especially with like a keyboard or something like that, like, you know, scales and progressions and chords, and obviously it's important, but like, where do you start, like, in that context?
Yeah, it's something that I think of quite a lot. But I don't think it's the be all and end all, because I think there's like amazing music out there made by a lot of electronic producers who might not actually know how to play any instrument, or who have never had any formal training in an instrument. And it's the same with like a lot of iconic like blues or jazz music. Like those people never had any.
Jimi Hendrix couldn't read music.
Yeah.
Either.
I don't know music theory. I'm the same as you. I played a bit of guitar back in the day, but there's also plugins. Like when you were talking about scales, there's this plugin called Scalar, and it's got all the different, like loads of different scales in the world. So you might be like, I want to use C major. You can just select that, and it will show you which keys on the keyboard to only play. So because it's like technology, you can just cheat it.
I feel like the majority of producers don't necessarily study music theory, but I also was saying this yesterday, but I don't think music theory really accounts for the human element of music. Because obviously there is a science to a lot of what we do, but a lot of it is to do with humans. And I think...
it's not written down.
Yeah.
So if you think about it...
You can't quantify that, like it's...
The only musical tradition where there's actual notation is Western classical music. So, like we're here in a part of the world where the music heritage goes back thousands of years, and it's like some of the most sophisticated musical like theories and things, but nothing was ever written down. Like if you play the sitar or if you learn how to sing ghazals or whatever, like you don't sing from a piece of paper. You learn all the rags by feeling it, right? And it's the same for every single type of music across the world. It was never written down, so it's about feeling it. So, there's definitely, it's good to have musical knowledge. Like I never, like, I didn't get to grade 8 or insane, like, prolific level of learning piano and things like that. But I do appreciate knowing some of the scales. But at the same time, I don't think it matters. Like Sarah said, Jimi Hendrix couldn't read music, but he made, like, the best guitar music that ever exists. So that's your answer.
Sorry, how do you know when a track is finished? Like, I usually overthink a lot.
The hardest thing.
What's the...
Sometimes you just need to leave it and not listen to it for a week and then go back to it. That's what I was going a bit crazy when I was finishing this first album, because I just was in this weird hole of like where I wasn't like eating or sleeping. I was just in the studio all the time. I like wasn't talking to anybody. And then you get to this point where you just can't tell. So it's always good to take breaks from stuff. Like a week, don't listen to a track you've been working on and then go back to it. And also if you've got like a few trusted friends who will listen to your music in an honest and critical way and whose opinion you trust, it's always good, like when you feel like it's ready to share with a few people, to just play it and see what other people, what their feedback is.
Yeah, for me, yeah, I'll play it out in the club and see what the reaction is.
Yeah. That's the best way. You have an opportunity to test it out, whether it's in a club or radio or even in a car.
Yeah. Even mixing one tune into another at home.
Yeah.
For electronic music.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, there's one more question, and then maybe we can take a break.
And then move
come
to
back.
club bangers
Yeah.
and Logic.
Yeah. Drum bangers. Yeah.
I had a question about the poem in the song, like, because you're obviously recording on the drum machine, so you did the drums separately and then you wrote the poem separately. But like in this song, it like matches perfectly along with the drums. So like, what's the process in like the recitation and the recording of the poem in like along with the drums that it sounds like perfectly in sync?
Okay. Yeah. So that's another basic of music production that obviously, like, we just ran out of time to cover. But when you're recording things, you have to make sure they're in time. So, right at the beginning, I spoke about the metronome, how you can have that time on. The other thing is, like, if you look at I don't know if I can get it up, but like the grid, like it shows you like where the bars start and like where the beats are and stuff. You have to just make sure everything's in time. So, I recorded the synths in first before any kind of percussion. So I just did that, but like to the time signature of 4/4 and like play it in time. Then when you record the drums in, you might have to shift them a bit, but you've got to just make sure that it all matches up to whatever tempo and time signature you're working towards. And if you don't do that, it's going to sound
And you
weird.
also have the markers here at the top as well. So even if you want to manually like you've always got that as a reminder.
You can shift things around. Yeah. Cool. Okay. All right. That's
Take a
the end
break.
of part one. Yeah.